conversation about third culture. So I think we covered a lot of like how does being a third culture kid affect your sense of individuality. In what ways do you think different cultural expectations changed your individuality?
Yeah. But I think growing up in Canada, you embody this American ideal of like the individualism and like you fight for who you want to be and like Lady Gaga, like I was born this way kind of vibe, like was like your anthem and everything. And that kind of let me really learn to fight for who I wanted to be. But then coming in Japan, it was like a very different experience. And oftentimes in Tokyo, I get asked why I'm here because for Japanese people, Canada seems like one of the most progressive places to be, especially for gender expression and everything. And I'll be like, yes, it's progressive, but actually you don't realize how much freedom in it, if like the way you dress you have in Japan. Like, especially if you're a foreign person. I mean, I'm not talking about people like in high school where they have to wear uniforms or if you're in a conservative company, but it's like I know that I won't get like violent like behavior.
Gaijin card.
Or just like people mind themselves, right?
Yeah.
In a certain way. So actually the moment I discovered myself the most, I think, was in Japan. Because in Canada, as I mentioned earlier, I only had the ability to say, I don't want to be this.
Yeah.
But I didn't have the freedom to know what I wanted to be. Like, I just wanted to break free from like the chains.
Yeah.
But I didn't know where I was going.
I see.
And then here in Japan, I kind of felt safe enough to be like, well, no one cares about what you do, so do whatever you want to do, right?
So, to your point, what do you think is like a difference between, because you said expressing through styles and clothes, right? I feel like it all goes all the way to like beauty standard, fashion style standard, like...
In Canada and America, I'm sure you both experienced, people dress very...
Basic?
Well, I was going to say casual.
Basic.
Right? And to put any sort of effort in your appearance, people are like, oh, what's the occasion? Or like, and even more for men, like if you have like a suit, like a matching like pant and jacket, people are like, whoa, 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 like...
Yeah.
Look at Mr. Fancy
you're
over here.
try hard, aren't you here? Whereas in Japan, I feel like, in a bad way, certainly, appearances are way more important, and you're almost expected to put effort into your appearance. In a good way, though, that gives you freedom to, like, play.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So I think people just, I don't know, regardless of gender in Japan, people are way more intentional about the way they present themselves.
Yeah.
So that was kind of a weird freedom.
So you cultivate your image and your individuality. And
Exactly.
your fashion choices. Yeah.
So that was one of the big things, I think.
That's reverse psychology right there. Yeah.
It's the same I found in Berlin as well, where if you dressed up, they were like, whoa, they almost look down on you.
Yeah, like try hard. I think the worst thing you can do in America or Western culture is just try hard.
But it's weird because you also have to show that you're motivated and trying hard, but you can't look like you're trying
hard.
too hard.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or you're pushing beyond your limits of what you're capable of, I suppose. Yeah. What about that statement, dress for the job you want, or dress for the life you want?
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
That's
I feel
very
like to me it's because I think when I was in San Francisco, I was definitely a try-hard. I was like those like Harajuku-ke, very colorful eyeballs.
Yeah.
Eyeballs, colorful hair and stuff. But I feel like in the States, how you can get away with people thinking you're a try-hard is you just keep doing it every single day. And they're like, oh,
this is
that's
my
just
identity.
that's just them.
Yeah.
Definitely. But I think, your identity kind of changing the environment so often, I'm sure for you guys as well, like kind of makes you have to question like who you are without the context, right? Like, as like you don't have this idea of like, well, I'm just a girl in Japan, whatever. It's like, but that Japan aspect, like the environment, is shifting.
Right.
So then what is left when everything that shifts disappears, right?
I do have a question going back to like styling or like being more freely express yourself in Japan and then nobody's like paying attention to it. You know, the whole thing about dressing up a certain way or putting on certain makeups because you want to express your own individuality, meaning like you want people to see it. But at least so far, my impression in Japan is I witnessed so many like really nicely styled people on the street, but almost besides me or other tourists, nobody is seeing them. And then it kind of leaves me this very ironic taste in my mouth every time I witness this. Like, everyone's trying their best. If in this society you're not allowed to express verbally through their clothing, through their makeup, but the society is also built for not identifying or recognizing anyone. And then that's kind of...
Yeah, the oppositeness in Japan is very polarizing because it's like you can't express via your personality, therefore you have to express.
That's what I'm saying. It's like, so... But that's just me coming in with still like a fresh point of view.
I mean, I used to be way more serious about my dancing than I am now. But when I was dancing very competitively in Canada, the thing that you were told the most is like you need to express and like be like embody the song, right? And so like if you're doing an aggressive song, you have to be like, you know, like kind of like go all out because people at the back need to be able to see you. And then I came to Japan and started dancing, and like it was some of the most amazing dancers like in the studios that are like 10 times better than me, but like the whole goal was like face down, cap back, you never see their face, and they're just like, you know, dancing really cool. And it's like almost like you are not there. It's like you're just like
a robot.
I don't want to say a robot, but like you're kind of like, it's about how I don't know. It was like I don't know how to express it, but it's and I had teachers who would be like, who would put extra emphasis on me in the class because I would be very like expressive with my face.
Yeah.
Especially like a lot of teachers who were like in LA, who would go to LA and be like, you guys need to like perform the song as well. And like even though I wasn't the best dancer, they would like pick me. They'd be like, oh, look at how this person like expresses it. So it's kind of like the school of thought is it technique first or versus like how you're expressing yourself first. It was like a very interesting contrast.
Approach is very different, and I find that's similar in the workplace as well because everyone's you know head down doing their work. They don't want to stick out. They don't want to lead. So naturally, when you get foreign talent who come in and are like, oh yeah, let's do this, or give suggestions because they're used to doing that, they're like, then you start being the leader now, even if they have great ideas.
Which I always feel weird. I think at my workplace, right, I work with so many talented creatives. You see their talents, you see what they can do, but like you said, because the mentality of heads down and then putting a cap on, I'm not sure if it's they don't believe they have the ability to also become their own creative leaders, or they just chose not to.
I have a theory in that, is that the priorities and the values are different. So they value showing that they can do hard work rather than showing their individualism.
But sometimes you look at the work that they're doing and it's so interesting, right? But it's just not vocalized in a certain way.
You know, from my like Western point of view, I always feel that's such a waste because I feel like you got all it takes. You don't need my direction. You can
figure it out yourself.
Yeah, and it's not in an I'm annoyed way, but more like, without my directions, I want to know how much bigger you can take this. You know what I mean? But because of that conflict mentality that you mentioned, I always feel like from styles to like dancing to workplace, there's always a piece that's missing that I'm like, maybe I'm still just too foreign to the culture to understand why that piece is not there.
One of the things that kind of was very... I was like aha moment for me to understand it was I do Japanese traditional dance, like Nihon Buyo, and it's so strict in terms of like the movements, like even from where your eyes are looking, like everything is like it's set, like there's no room for your expression. And my teacher, she was saying, she's like, it's because the playground is so set and everyone has to play by the same rules, that when everyone is doing the exact same movements but someone stands out, it's actually even more like emphasizing their individuality. Because it's like, if everyone's doing the same move, why is that person somehow like shining brighter than the others? So it's like, instead of it being just like a colorful like chaos where you can't really compare anyone because everyone's so different, you put a filter that compares everyone the same. to actually be able to tell each person's individuality the most, which is kind of why like when in Japan you do the job hunting process, right? Like everyone has to be like the same, so that you can then kind of get to like the core of them without like the chaotic appearance. And I was like, that's really interesting, and to a certain way it does make sense. It's kind of like standardizing the things that don't need to be evaluated.
Like no distractions almost.
Exactly, which is so different from how we think, right?
Yeah,
it's like,
because we're like, no, we need to see who you are as a person, like how you express yourself. Work is like
and who you are is valued at how different you are from other people in the West. It's like, how much can we not find someone like you is the way we say you're cool.
Because it's kind of like, what do you bring to the table that's different?
Exactly.
That we can't get anywhere else.
And whereas here it's like, how much better can you do what everyone else can also do? Right. So,
ooh, that's probably tougher and more cutthroat.
Maybe, I think so.
I will fail in this society.
Because you can fake your way into being like, oh yeah, I can do this.
I'm quirky and weird.
Hire me, I'm crazy. Oh my gosh.
So how do you think the role of individualism plays within your professional and your personal life as a third culture kid?
I mean, I think oftentimes your experience ends up being like your background is what people are often looking for, right? Like this unique eye on things. But one of the things that I think is quite interesting is, in my case, I've been in Japan since I was 21. So it's basically since I was a student until now. So I have no work experience outside of Japan. So people will ask me like, well, what about Canada? I was like, I haven't lived there for 10 years, so I have the same like 10 years of social experience as you do. So it's hard, like the less you live abroad, the weaker your like
ties back.
The things you can bring into it. So it's kind of, then what do you bring back? It's kind of like my recent
or maybe
thoughts.
When you go to Canada, it'll be just so vastly different.
Like when I go back to Canada, like I have like so much reverse culture shock in a certain way that you don't realize when you're here, right? Or when I have friends who come over, I'm just like, oh my god, we are so different now in a certain way. But for job, I think it's sort of like third culture is about finding the connection in disconnected things, right? Because you have these like different snapshots of what can be and how things can connect. And like bringing that to the work culture is like really interesting. And I think for me, going abroad periodically is really important. Like I went back, like in Japan, just to even talk about like women's rights, you know, we're so in a different conversation, right? Like we're literally like the biggest argument you can have about women's rights right now in Japan will be like, can women keep their last name, right? And I went back to Canada and my friend was telling me like we really should be fighting for the government to sponsor women's like to preserve their eggs. Because technically women are paying taxes through their jobs, so it's benefiting the country, but we're losing our like productive years, according to my friend, right? So it's like that should be covered by taxes. I'm like, that's a conversation like 30 or 40 years in like Japan. That's something I never even thought about. Like I don't know if it's correct or not, but it was like that's a point of view that I would never get in Japan, I think, in a certain way. So
hey, if Japan focused on that 30, 40 years ago, we wouldn't be in this problem now.
Exactly.
I feel like we need another 30 or 40 years.
There was this Taiwanese artist, scientist, Kwang Yiku, who's really interesting because he is based in Taiwan and Holland, I think, and his art is all kind of theoretical. So everything is like done CGI wise, so nothing is real. But he has a huge science background, and he proposed like a project called like Grandmother Mother, where like the woman would not be the one to bear the children; it would be the mother of the woman. So your mom would be the one who would be in vitro with your children. So it's like when you're in your like able years, right, of like working, but your mom is probably retired at the age of like 50 and 60. So she should be the one to like...
So she would be the surrogate.
Yeah, the surrogate. And then when you're 50 and 60, you'll be your child's surrogate. And he presented this in Taiwan, and the Taiwanese reception was like, oh my god, this is amazing, because it's such a work culture and everyone's so busy.
So does a husband get to have sex with the person's mom?
Surrogate.
But you could still...
Surrogate.
You could do it.
You could still bang the mom.
But then he presented this in Holland, and the reaction was like, oh, this is atrocious, like, what is this going to do to, like, family, like, relationship? How is this going to, like, affect the home, like, dynamic and everything? So it's kind of like each culture has different, like, worries, right? Like Taiwan and Asia, we're like, how do we work more because we're so overworked and we don't have time to take a break. And in Europe, the reception is so different. So having that like different perspective was so interesting.
It's interesting because when you first said that, I was kind of like, wait, but then I'm gonna have a sense of obligation to my mom now because she's gonna bear my child. So
that's all the Asian, the traumatizing side of Asian culture. Family
How
drama.
much will I owe them for this?
Yeah, I was like, I already owe them so much by existing. But I would pay respect to the scientists / artists and proud to be Taiwanese.
Yeah, it'd be cool if it was the grandfather mother,
or grandparent mother, whoever chooses to do it in the future.
You should not be enabling this kind of conversation to go on.
What was that movie with Arnold Schwarzenegger that had the baby?
All the guys have babies, right?
Yeah.
That was such a gross movie.
What movie was that?
It was like in the 90s.
Pregnant. In the 90s.
Oh,
yeah, and then they had this whole story about male getting pregnant instead of females, and then he was one of them. But because at that time the production technical aspect is not that good, so the baby they created.
The effects are kind of janky.
Yeah.
Was this an alien movie?
Yeah. Sigourney Weaver wasn't.
Sorry, wrong movie. Sorry.
Wow. So to tie it back, how do you think third culture kids can maintain their sense of individuality when they're being pulled into so many different cultural avenues?
I mean, do you guys have a strong sense of self? Have you succeeded at this?
I don't think I have, because my thing is that I'm quite a cultural chameleon.
I think to me it's more philosophical. Like I start to view a strong sense of self in a way that I know my personality will change based on environment and then based on, what I'm surrounded by. If that's the case, why even bother searching a clear, solidified answer of what's the strong sense of self?
Yeah.
Just go with the flow.
Yeah.
I think the reason why the question is so important. Yeah, I think one of the reasons why this question, like the sense of self, might be so important for TCG kids, third culture, TCKG?
TCK.
Third culture, TCK.
JFK.
TCG is Tokyo Girls
KFC.
Collection.
KFC.
To KFC kids. It's because we're asked it so often, right? It's like, where are you from? What are your backgrounds? But if we weren't asked so much, would it matter as much to us?
Yeah.
Right? Like I wonder if a Japanese person who's living in Japan in a Japanese society or whatever, in a born raised, ever wonders so much about like who they are.
I feel like not as much, because their identity is, I'm Japanese, or I'm Canadian. There's so much about your personality or individuality that comes from this cultural background. But yeah.
I do encounter, I was talking about our podcast with my friends, like a group of, they are Japanese, and then one of them, I thought they wouldn't be find it as relatable, right? So when they're like, what kind of podcast are you doing? And then I'm like, it's about third culture kids, but it's okay if you're not, you don't find it interesting, I get it. But the moment I started to talk about it, there are elements that they pick up. They're like, I can also relate to that, even though I know I've been in Japan my entire life. I
have a lot of friends who are Japanese, and it's like, I don't fit in this culture.
Yeah. Because it's so conformative.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. It's like this idea of not fitting into the one culture is not only based on it's also value based, right?
But I feel like the one perks of being a TCK, KFC kids, is that, to your point earlier when we were talking about sheeple, is because we got taken out of that context, a huge cultural context. We get to see from the outside more clearly. That helped us label a lot of things, while to many monocultural people, because they lived in that culture, so even they feel like they don't belong somewhere, it's harder for them to identify or navigate because you're still within that environment. Yeah.
You don't have I'm an outsider anyways. It's like you're like, I'm supposed to fit in.
There's still one of the fried chicken in that bucket.
Exactly.
Even the fried chicken's different in each culture. Right?
But they don't know which crust is different.
So crispy.
But one of the things they talk about identity, and even for example the question of pronouns comes often when we talk about gender, is the importance of them. And I was talking to this teacher, I think in Kobe University, he's a professor, and they were saying that ultimately identity and pronouns and all of these things that we talk so much are just a way for you to justify who you are in a society. It's like they're actually not your own. It's like it's not about you.
Yes.
It's about your position in a society.
Yeah.
And so I think it's important to understand its use, but also like third culture kid, whatever, like mixed or like all these things.
Don't put yourself into that box that everyone else tells you.
It's actually not about you.
Yeah.
So then, like I said, I just go with the flow.
Yeah.
I was like, ultimately, I need to verbalize who I am for outsiders to understand who I am. But as long as I kind of know who I am,
what you like and what you don't like, that's strong within you.
That's enough for me. Even like my gender identity, I still don't know how to verbalize it. People ask me like, what are your pronouns and everything? I was like, I don't know, to be honest, but I don't feel that strong of a need to like...
Yeah.
And that mystery is probably what bothers people as well. They're like, you must tell me.
You must.
What is it?
You must let me understand the situation.
Yeah.
I need to
Like,
understand.
tell me how to identify
I
you.
need to mind your business.
Well, because it's giving them a crutch. It's like, which box should I put you in so that I know how to interact with you?
What are the assumptions that I have
Yeah.
based on those?
I'll keep you guessing.
Yeah, exactly. Can't find me.
Who am I? What am I?
So the lesson here is none of us are individuals.
We're all just sheeples.
Sheeples.
Say no. Ba.
I mean, I think, for example, back to pronouns or anything, there's a lot of people who find it really useful. Like, if I bring it to like sexuality, a lot of people have this sort of like discomfort with society, and they don't know how to verbalize it until they see a word like pansexual. That's what I've been this whole time, right? So it's like a useful tool to kind of
pans.
Yes. No. Pansexual means you like any human. Yeah. Or if you're Japanese, it would be like bread. Pansexual.
Baguettes, meronpan.
Croissant.
But it's kind of like, I think they're all useful tools to maybe kind of verbalize a thing you can't figure out on your own.
So like educating yourself on various definitions will help you to express your individualism.
Yeah. Like even if you're a child in like the countryside who's never heard the word like gay, right? And you're like, why can't I like girls? And then all of a sudden you figure out, oh wait, there's a group of people where it's okay to be like to like guys or like to girls, whatever, right? And it's like, oh okay, so it's not just me. It's like I'm part of something that's okay, right?
Yeah, I feel like it all comes down to, again, everyone is craving a sense of belongings, community, and then all those.
It can be individuals
I don't want to say
together.
labels, but like once upon a time, my therapist was telling me, and then that was just addressing like emotions, right? Why people go to therapy is not so much of they want to get fixed, but more like help them to label their feelings when they're going through. I think it's the same thing. It's like, one is you can realize there is a community for you, and then you're not alone, but also help you kind of understand yourself better through those terminology, so you know like, oh, whatever I'm feeling or experiencing is not just in my head, it's valid. Yeah.
And that's why we have this podcast, so we can show that there's a community of people, of like-minded individuals who are all the same.
Yes. But I think if we have time to touch on like the last topic of this sort of like individualistic culture versus like the one in most Asian countries, community-based cultures, one of the biggest shocks I had when I came to Japan first was being like, wow, there's no individuality here. And that's a very Western like initial thing, like, wow, why is everyone the same? When if to my eyes they look the same, it's because I was untrained to be able to tell the difference, right? But even then, now I see a lot of the problems that arise from all the segmentation, like, you know, even within the LGBTQ community, now you have LGBTQIA+ or LGBTQI or like Two-Spirit, you know, it gets longer. And then the more categories you have, now you have a lot of fighting in between groups, you know, like, and whereas in Japan, you didn't really have LGBTQ, right? It's like kind of this like, you know, unspoken
different
thing.
box.
And now you're having like, you know, all these labels being imported that's creating the categories that maybe didn't exist as firmly there. So I'm like, are these individualistic labels as important as we thought they were? Or I think there's some good points to like the communal aspect that that is kind of like less segregating people.
Yeah,
right?
it's like I feel like if we take terminologies as the context, it could be applied in different ways based on where you are at, the environment you're in, the culture you're in, because not one methodology is applicable to everywhere, and that's okay.
Yeah.
I also think like the individualistic culture in the West has brought a lot of issues just in terms of like segregation, right? Because you're like, as long as I'm
Us
okay,
versus them.
exactly right, and that translates into like how you have private schools that are way overfunded versus like the public school system, whereas in Japan it's like everyone needs to be okay, right? Because we're all sharing
all
the same
embrace
spaces.
communism.
Yes.
Probably.
Well, I'm a slight bit of a Marxist, but
Yes,
not to
Thea.
that extreme.
Yeah,
maybe.
always take things to the extreme, Taya.
But you know,
That's true.
there's there was a girl talking on Instagram, and she was saying, you know, there's this logic of like, if things around you are chaotic, put yourself first, right? And it's like, yes, it's important to have your own mental health as a priority.
Yeah.
But also, it's like, how can your mental health be well if your community's mental health is not well, right? Because you're a product of your community, right? So it's like, it's kind of impossible to do just one.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Yeah.
Because we are creatures that crave
Community.
Yeah. Well, you know, the longest standing study on happiness and longevity is about community.
Really?
So, yeah, one of the key factors into longevity is having
A community.
happiness from community.
Oh yeah.
And that's our episode on Does Culture Affect Individuality?
Answer is, there is no individuality.
We're all sheeple. Hi, say no. Bye.
Okay, well, drop a comment on whatever platform you're using. YouTube, hit like and
Drop a comment.
Spotify, follow us and
Drop a comment.
Instagram, follow, reshare and drop a comment. TikTok, share and
Drop a comment.
We love to hear stories
And yeah, stay tuned because we will be back.
with season 2 at some point, which will be announced on your socials.